they're probably going to engage in that behavior or something similar to contact whatever it was that they were going to get by that original behavior. So it doesn't teach anything else. It's missing that component. For discipline, I mean, I don't know, how would you define discipline? I don't use that terminology necessarily with my clients. I try to stick with reinforcement and punishment so they can identify what the differences are. But Bridge, what would you say about that?
Well, go ahead, Bridget.
I don't use it either. I use reinforcement and punishment. Yeah, for the points that Molly made.
For my understanding of discipline is got its roots in the Greek word of disciple, which means to teach. So if you're disciplining someone, you're literally teaching them. And I don't know if there's a lot of education that goes into striking a child, for example, or removing like you said, the reinforcer. That there's no education there. If there is, you just told them that you're untrustworthy.
So I think where we would go with that is probably the use of differential reinforcement, which again is another jargony term, right?
Very jargony.
Behavior analysis is full of it. But in that procedure is basically we are going to there's two roads operating essentially at the same time. So on this road, we're delivering reinforcement, right? Where we have selected, and this is where probably discipline teaching, if we're teaching something, right? If that's the hope. We are going to identify an alternative form of behavior that's more appropriate, that will still enable that child to gain access to whatever it was that they were, trying to get by engaging in this behavior. So for example, with the punishment, if they were trying to get dad's attention, right? So they did something, they get dad's attention, he spanks them. That's what we're talking about, right? Attention followed that. We would teach them to maybe go, I don't know, just for lack of a better example, tap dad on the shoulder and say, hey, dad, come play with me, right? So then they're going to get his attention and his, full undivided attention there. The other path is we are ignoring everything that we don't want to attend or reinforce or attend to. So, and that basically extinction. So we're running two different things. We're going to only attend to this and we're no longer attending to this. I mean, of course there's caps on that, right? Because of ethics and safety and things of that nature. But for just like basic examples, we're no longer going to attend to Johnny, screaming and yelling to get, or hitting his siblings to get dad's attention. We're going to do it this way. And so that's probably the procedure that we would recommend.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that procedure, even though it's highly effective, gets a little murky in the real world with parenting. Johnny screaming in the car when we're driving a 2-hour drive, it's going to be really tough for a parent to ignore that.
Right.
And it's going to be even more difficult when Johnny's sister is yelling at Johnny to stop too. Right. So sometimes there's right. And sometimes there's other things we have to add into those procedures, like, setting up expectations, setting up really powerful antecedents, things like that. But knowing, when you're in the moment, you have to ignore that thing that you're choosing to ignore, or you're going to likely put it, make it more powerful, make it something that's more of a powerful tool for that individual. But that's also part of the clinician skill set to identify, will this work at this time for this family? And if it doesn't, let's figure something else out.
Yeah, I can see like highly emotionally charged families who are prone to chaos. It would be very hard to introduce a concept like extinction because they're so emotionally reactive to whatever the stimulus is, that it's very hard to approach it logically and to turn that off. So emotional non-attachment is key. If you're going to extinguish a behavior, you got to look at it like it's an entry in a book. It's unpleasant. But even that is a judgment upon what it is. I mean, maybe it's just a thing. He's screaming.
And it's not easy, And
and one other thing I just want to add to this to ensure that this is clear, if that's happening, if there's ever a moment where I tell anybody, ignore whatever this is, ignore this behavior, whatever the behavior is, before I introduce that, I make sure I can give them a list of things that the learner is going to do appropriately, that they're going to reinforce, likely before that problem behavior of the screaming, for example, happens. So if every time Johnny gets in the car, he's screaming because he wants a particular toy or he wants some toys, but he's likely to drop them. Okay, let's get him a tray to sit with. So that way those toys are going to be available for him. Or let's get him a bucket that he'll be close to so he can keep accessing things when I'm driving and I can't help him. Let's set it up so that there's going to be a million other things and as many other opportunities available for him to have a good time, so the screaming doesn't occur, if that's the function of it.
And what I'm hearing too, because you mentioned the word earlier, antecedent, I'm guessing that's the thing that precedes the thing. So in this case, it would be inviting Johnny to make a choice. It's Timmy this time. Inviting Timmy to make a choice about which toys he wants to bring and leave behind, so it empowers him to have a voice in his own decision-making process. Is that an antecedent?
Yeah. Well, it's an antecedent intervention. We would call it like choice making, offering choices.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, we all have children here. I don't want my kids to have to listen to somebody blindly. I don't even want them listening to me blindly, even though some days I regret saying those things. I want them to make their own choices. That's how they become, functioning adults and contribute to society later on. So as parents and as clinicians, it's really important to instill that in our clients and the families of those clients. Like, we want this to be their choice. If it's not their choice, I don't know if I lost you, sorry. If it's not their choice, what are we teaching them if they're only doing it because you're there?
How do you balance that? How do you balance that against just respect for authority? You're not challenging everything all the time, because some of us who bear a striking resemblance to myself and sound a lot like me and maybe sitting in this room right now have lost many, many jobs because I ignorantly and innocently questioned processes without knowing that I was inadvertently challenging authority. And they're like, "Yep, sorry, you're gone because you threatened my existence as manager or whatever." How do you balance?
Well, that might have been a technique portion on your part, issue on your part.
Lack of diplomacy, I don't know, but it wasn't until much later in life, and I was like, "Oh, whoa! I was really offending people by simply asking, why do we do things this way at this company?" And granted, they didn't have the ego strength to hold that space for me and correct me. Some bosses did, and they were very good. Others did not. But it was because my parents trained me well, like what you're describing, is like to question things. And I got mocked for it in school too. I asked in trigonometry, why was 0, 0? Like, why 0? Why did we pick that to be the 0? And they were like, what do you got a hole in your head, kid? Move on with the lesson. But how do we do that? How do we just balance, like, hey, no one when to shut up and just take the lesson versus, raising your hand? And
I think at the elementary stages of it all, you honor that this is it's a respectful relationship on both ways, that goes both ways. So I want my children to ask those questions. In fact, if they're not asking those questions, I'm going to have a problem with that. But I want them to learn how to do that in a safe environment, in a safe space that in our home is a little bit more contrived and controlled, that I can give them feedback on how they're doing those things, if that's what you mean. Right. But it has to be mutual. And I want all of my clients and all of my parents to understand that it is a relationship. It's not one way or the highway type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely bidirectional. And I mean, obviously we can do what we want with the children, right? And train them and teach them. But then we still have this other piece over here too, that the kids aren't necessarily, like in your instance, trying to take you down or question your policies and your procedures and everything. It's not necessarily offensive. And so really, and sometimes we have this conversation, and I work with a lot of interdisciplinary teams and things. And oftentimes it comes down, and I will have to say, this is called adulting, right? This kid is not, they didn't hit you with the water bottle because they were trying to harm you intentionally, right? It's what's going on in the environment. So that's on us as well as adults to really, again, use like the compassion, like Molly was going back to what Molly was saying, and really working with our learners and trying to, further establish and refine those questioning. I'm glad you're asking these questions. That's great. Yeah. Here's why I made that decision. This is why I did what I did. But that's a skill that the adults are going to have to recognize, that we also have to, make a little bit of change and be a little bit flexible into.
I appreciate you saying that, because I've seen this time and again with clinicians who get the recalcitrant teenager who's, quote unquote, oppositional and questioning everything, and usually doing it with a poor tone and angry countenance. But when I get those kids, I'm like, oh man, I got a bright kid here. He sees more than the adults allowing to see. Right. And so trying to help the adults in his life, whether it be teachers who are frustrated or parents who are angry, like view him as this kid who's got all this opportunity because he's intelligent enough to challenge authority and ask. Maybe he's not doing it the right way. We can work on that, but let's not stamp out the potential for growth, right? So I appreciate you saying, like, it's up to the adults to own some of that and be okay with being questioned. And we should have answers for why. That's why intentionality is my favorite word.
I think oftentimes too, and I know I did my doctorate at Western Michigan, and there was a lot of conversation about, diagnoses and labels and things like that. And as behavior analysts, we don't necessarily care about that. It's just kind of a classification of a group of, behaviors that are similar across populations. We know that we have the science to target a lot of those things and teach appropriate behaviors. And in that instance, or that example, I would say it doesn't, maybe he is oppositional defiant, right? Maybe this is conduct disorder or whatever.
Sure.
That's great. But let's recognize what he's doing and recognize his strengths and those values for him, and then teach him a more appropriate form of, engaging in this behavior to, achieve the same outcome or whatever. And so I think, as adults too, we need to do a little bit of a better job, teachers, whoever it is, of framing those, not in terms of diagnostic symptomology, but as strengths of our clients, and really how we can empower them and take that in terms of like the values and the therapeutic direction.
You're not rigorously, but just agree. I want to be mindful of time and respectful of everybody's calendars, but I do want to close out with a question about like the future of the field. And I know you both are in leadership roles in various capacities, within the state and licensing and that kind of thing, associations. Right now, as I see it, and this may be a big can of worms we don't have time to go into, but at least like some impressions. We, as professionals working all in the behavioral health realm, under the umbrella, so to speak, we don't talk. Sometimes we fight, but we certainly don't talk. We don't consult. Sometimes we denigrate each other. Sometimes we elevate each other. But at bare minimum, we just don't collaborate. How do we fix this? Like magic wand, long term, whatever. Not tomorrow or but like how do we solve this? More podcasts certainly would help. But what do you guys see from your perspective as behavior analysts?
I think it's really hard. And I think Brighid has a great role to impact this type of collaboration, because it's what we teach our clinicians, and teaching our clinicians from the very beginning of their careers to collaborate is going to be really helpful. Behavior analysts have a history and a bad reputation for being arrogant, and and everybody does that. Like you were saying, fields aren't really communicating well with each other, but even within our field, there's a lot of that goes on. But I am seeing a shift in a lot of, at least the social media groups that I'm part of within our field, where people are starting to talk more about how to interact with each other in different ways that is more appropriate. So I guess I'm not really answering your question necessarily, but I think it's going to happen at the college level, at the schooling level. And I think it's also going to happen through things like podcasts and webinars and conferences where, younger professionals are going to go to these conferences and see these big names that they admire because of the work they've done, interacting with, marriage and family therapists and SLPs and other practitioners from different fields, and valuing their work and honoring their work too.
Dr. Fronapfel's published. She's one of those names, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not that many times. My list is small. I agree. I think, I agree it has to happen with our trainees and our supervisees, and we need to embed that and ingrain it early on. But I also, I'm going to go back to, adulting, right? It's on us. And I think for individual clinicians, practitioners, those of us, especially in leadership roles, to kind of recognize that while our science is great, we do a lot of great things. Behavior analysts we're amazing. We're amazing. Right, Molly?
If you do say so
yes, we are.
We are.
Yes, we are.
We have some really wonderful clinicians and, some great outcomes, but there are also professions that have strengths and skills in areas that we don't. And I think it's really important for us, step one, to recognize that recognize where we can collaborate interdisciplinary with them, and there are certain things we can't do, and we need those relationships in order to refer out at times. And then you're often left with who do I refer out to, right? Because I don't know any marriage and family therapists, or I don't know a neuropsychologist. And so really taking it upon yourself to kind of get out of your box and professionally